Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
Another comment response. This time a person left a comment on the video that I did. BPD loving a borderline. Why borderline split the value ghost you? I can't really see the rest of the title. So the commenter says, I'm having trouble identifying as codependent. I hadn't been in a relationship for 7 years before I met her. I simply took care of her because I said I would. I felt it was a duty. Here again, we have another example of somebody who's reasonably moderately or a little bit more codependent, and they say they're having trouble identifying as a codependent. It's not really about identifying as a codependent. It's really about being able to stop denying your codependency, because that's about your core woundedness. And if you're denying the codependency that is evident, in a lot of these commenters' comments, and they're not sure, then they're denying their own woundedness, and that's going to be, to one degree or another, self-abandonment. That goes on for so many with codependency who are maybe still in denial of the codependency. Codependency, by the way, has its roots in childhood. Codependency doesn't just happen to you because you've been in a relationship with somebody with BPD, or NPD for that matter. So this person having trouble identifying as a codependent. They hadn't been in a relationship for 7 years before they met this person, but they just need to take care of her because they said they would, and they felt like it was a duty. Well, part of that isn't codependency. What do you think? Because if you resonate with this, and a lot of people do, because a lot of people aren't communicating or relating in healthy enough ways for yourself with somebody who has BPD or NPD. Never mind what's going on with them. That's important, and that's their responsibility. And you need to make choices about how that affects you and what you need to do for yourself. But why all this denial, which is the number one sign of codependency, denying that one has codependency to deal with? It's self-abandonment right there, and obviously not in a conscious way. So the commenter continues, I felt bad for her, which is why I think she was both BPD and a covert narc. Doesn't make much sense. They said they would look after her, so they simply took care of her because they said they would. They felt it was a duty, and they felt really bad for her. And because they felt really bad for her, this is why they think she's a borderline narcissist, comorbidly. Excuse me, I'm missing where one aspect connects to the other, because it totally doesn't. The commenter goes on, she had plenty of victim stories. Okay, so I don't want to offend you, but keeping it real to help you heal. Lots of people with codependency have a lot of victim stories too. This is not just people with BPD. This doesn't make a person necessarily that you know of have BPD or be a borderline / narcissist. Then they continue, I thought it would be easy to be a good man to her compared to the rest. She had so many great qualities in my eyes. Perfect for me, so I thought. She obviously said the same about me. Okay, here you might think I'm going too far. But it's codependent, not independent. Codependent, not healthy, to think somebody's perfect for you. And based on what? And how quickly? Perfect? Really? That's usually a big red flag. It wasn't until we moved in on the very first night, she banged her head against the wall. I got really scared. Then every 4 days, she would rage at me. Commenter continues, I guess my question is, if they cannot love or receive love, which makes sense because she was never grateful for my affections or things I did, why did she say she loved me? That's a question I get often when I'm working with people. With due respect and a lot of compassion, I ask, can you relate to this? Do you think you're still denying codependency? And are you in a sort of naive but wounded way that you might not be consciously aware of, Are you believing that the person with BPD loves you primarily based on because they say they do? Or in fact, they might tell you so often how much they love you, but their behavior and actions and the way they treat you is not congruent with what they're saying? Because the more that a person with BPD says over and over they love you, but shows you in actions and other words that they don't, and they aren't respecting you, and they might be abusing you, the more the person with BPD is simply lying to you. And that can be such an incredibly, awfully horrible thing to try to take in and understand after you really loved the person who you thought they were. Why did she say she loved me? Because a lot of people with BPD really believe that they are loving a partner or someone else, a favorite person or a friend, when actually they can't be doing that. But unbeknownst to them, they feel like they're loving you, but they confuse love with their needs. And they also don't have a self from which to know themselves in order to know the clear difference between where they end and where you begin. So it gets all mixed up between their lack of known self, what they believe to be real in what they feel, which is often not the case, and they're unaware of how their actions don't match their declarations of love or their stated feelings of love. And then they're often unaware of how they're treating you in between telling you how much they love you, which has nothing to do with giving you love, loving you, or receiving your love. That has all to do with the intermittent reinforcement of otherwise an abusive, toxic way that they actually do treat you, not seeing you, not hearing you, not relating to you for who you really are. People with BPD, the more they say that they love you and their actions don't match that, though it takes time for people with codependency to catch up to that after the honeymoon phase, perhaps, and the idealization, but the more they say it, the more they're just trying to put in there how they misconstrue their needs for loving you because they're not actually capable of loving you because they have no self and they have no self-love. You can't love somebody else if you don't know yourself and or you hate yourself. A lot of people with BPD hate what is actually the absence of self. And people with codependency can have a lot of issues there also about healthy love and what is healthy love and how you will self-abandon yourself to give more in a one-way relating, communicating situation with somebody with BPD or NPD, and you're not getting anything back. That's really tantamount to codependent self-harm. Because whatever happens with the borderline or the narcissist, we're not excusing their behavior or if they behave poorly or etc. But you're overgiving to them and then kind of blaming them for not fulfilling your needs when at some point that should become obvious that that isn't happening, though it's complicated. Why did she say she loved me? Because you often say they can't love us back. And a commenter says, my ex would often do things for me, like bringing me food at work, getting me a snack from the store without me asking, setting up a surprise birthday party, etc. But she'd never do what I repeatedly communicated to her that I needed to feel loved, i.e. spending time with me and physical affection primarily. She wanted me around, but didn't want to be close to me. Well, I think this is another part of codependent denial. The commenter is saying, well, I'm always saying they can't love us back. This is a prime example because some people might think, well, it's kind. Without anything else supporting it, is it really love that somebody does things for you once in a while, brings you food at work, gets you a snack, like the commenter said, goes to the store without your asking, sets up a surprise birthday party? Nice things to do. But the commenter, to reiterate, said, but she never would do what I repeatedly communicated to her that I needed to feel loved. So in other words, the commenter is saying, in their own codependency really, that they didn't get what they needed to feel loved. So why am I always saying that borderlines can't love people back? Well, he didn't get what he needed to feel loved. So clinging on to these other maybe kinder acts, seeming giving that is mistaken for love, that is often done by somebody with BPD out of what they're needing, it's tantamount to, regardless, the intermittent reinforcement. Like, oh, borderline starts to feel abandonment again, whether consciously or unconsciously. Oh, I'll do something nice. I'll go to the store and pick them up something to eat. I will set up a birthday party. But this, in and of itself, these actions can be very much a response to how they're feeling, that maybe now you're more distant because you're not getting what you need. You're not feeling like you're heard about what you need when you communicate what you need to feel loved. So doing the best they can sometimes, but it can be also manipulative, whether consciously or unconsciously. The person with BPD then does something nice, and that's your intermittent reinforcement to say, well, they must love me, or it must be okay. I must have this wrong because, well, they did this really nice thing for me. And then you're self-abandoning yourself again through that because you're like, well, so see, he or she really does love me. And then you'll come back to them behaving differently again, and the realization that, wait a minute, that was nice when they did the birthday party thing. That was nice when they brought me something from the store that I didn't ask them to do. But I'm still not being heard. I'm still not getting what I need to feel loved. Which, believe it or not, a lot of people with codependency just keep pushing down and pushing down. And maybe it even leaves your conscious awareness at times. And so you wonder, how come it seems like they loved you so much because they did this or that, the intermittent reinforcement, but you're not feeling like they hear what you need to actually feel loved? They're not doing anything about that. They don't do anything about that. And they just continue to tell you that they love you while their actions show opposite or very different kinds of behavior and the ways that they treat you and disrespect you out of their need and fear of abandonment. That's all about them. So in the codependent denial, to come out of that, you have to ask yourself, so like, how is it that I was actually being loved? If you can relate to what this commenter said about, but she didn't hear what I communicated. She never responded, reacted, or changed anything to help me with what I said I need to feel loved. She just wanted to be close, but didn't really want to have anything to do with him. Can you relate to this? Because it's very common in relationships between people with BPD and people with codependency. And it's not love, it's often the borderline intermittent reinforcement given because maybe they think, oh, I better do something nice because they don't want to get abandoned here, because they need you close, but they don't want to be around you. And there's no way that you can really sit down and logically or even intellectually say that that equals or is synonymous with love, or that there isn't a total conflict between what they're doing in intermittent reinforcement versus what they say, versus how they don't really hear what you need to feel loved, and how they want to be close to you but not be around you. That's all about their needs, not love. In the place of actually feeling loved, seen, heard, valued, Commenter says she wanted me around but didn't want to be close to me. Can you relate to that? Because all of this codependent denial of the fact that people with BPD can't love you and really didn't love you has to do with the borderline's overcompensatory way of trying to maybe reassure you with words that can be somewhat gaslighting often, maybe not always,
But you so want to believe that they're who you thought they were versus who they really are or aren't. And so it's codependent denial, because this commenter says it perfectly accurately why I say they can't love you back with this comment. She wanted me around but didn't want to be close to me. So why would she want you around, or why would your person with BPD have wanted you around but not wanted to be close or have the inability to be close with you? Because they need to seek identity through you. It's about their needs again, that they consciously but usually unconsciously are representing to you that that's why they love you, because actually they need you, and unconsciously they're not aware that they need to seek identity through you. So they want you close sometimes until they don't, and maybe they want you back, but it's not about love. It's codependent denial that there can be love in the face of this intermittent reinforcement, untruth, lack of the borderline self, and words that don't match actions over and over again.
And then the commenter continues, was she trying? Was she aware of the truth and hiding it? I don't know how many people with BPD are aware of the truth and hiding it. I mean, I don't think they're aware of when their capacity to love is compromised by the arrested emotional development, by not having any treatment, by not knowing who they are, and by the way that they don't feel good about themselves often, and then they project that onto others. They lack trust. They don't know themselves well enough to relate to others. They relate to others as the object of their parent representation often, and not really you for who you are. So you're not really seen. So I don't think it was really that. She might have been trying in some way, yes. And was she aware of the truth or hiding it? I don't know. That's a very individual thing. She never said, quote, I don't love you, unquote. More like, quote, you are evil, unquote. Quote, F you, unquote, etc.
And again, with respect and compassion, I would suggest to you only when one is codependent, and especially in denial of that codependence, can you still be making or trying to make a case for this person with BPD loves you, because they didn't say they didn't love you. They just told you to F off and a bunch of stuff like you're evil and you're bad and everything's your fault. So what up with that? Can you relate to that? Because a lot of people, again, with respect and compassion, with codependency in these relationships, you are trying so hard to get back to or still believe in this person with BPD that they are who you thought they were when they aren't. And it's where codependency intersects unconsciously with what's really holding you in the betrayal bond dynamic at this juncture, that you could hear those type of words. But when the borderline, no matter how bad they swear at you, accuse you, call you names, but if they don't say, quote, I don't love you, unquote, you're going to still have hope that somehow they're loving you. That's a really painful place to be. That's a really wounded, unconscious inner child coming forth to keep you stuck with the intention of trying to make something better for you that you could find out maybe with this borderline. But that's not how your healing and recovering from codependency can possibly work. And again, I'm out here to work with anybody who wants to really get into this, to understand what you've been going through, why, if you're still in it, why you can't break free from this person, the betrayal bonds, etc., and heal from the codependency and realize what love is and what love isn't moving forward, and finding your own self-love. And when you know that, you'll be much more discerning and a lot less codependent about, oh, well, quote, she didn't say she didn't love me, unquote, therefore she must love me because you want so badly for her to be the person that you thought she was, even though she isn't. The intermittent reinforcement, She wants to be around me, but she doesn't want to be close to me. Oh, she did a few nice things for me. Intermittent reinforcement. This is all codependent denial, and it is also the actions of the borderline. But combine those two things, and this is one of the major reasons why you're in an incredible world of hurt.
Here's where the codependency really rises to be obvious to me, okay, in my opinion. Because the person is saying, why did she say she loved me? But they got really scared because she was banging her head on the wall. That's terrible. It's somebody who's having a lot of stress inside with BPD about relating and might not understand consciously why. Though there are many people out there with BPD that do and or in treatment or getting better. So not all people with BPD are the same. Well, here's the other thing. She would say the most horribly verbally abusive things, but she never said, I don't love you. But how did she behave and what did she show this person? That she really didn't know how to love them, because she would be saying, F off and you're evil and all these, often they'll throw in there, you're a narcissist, that kind of thing. What does that have to do with love? The answer is nothing. And therefore, she never said to the commenter, this person with BPD never said to, or maybe with BPD, never said to the commenter that they didn't love the person. But their behavior screamed that they didn't know how to love the person, and that they were splitting to devaluation, and that things were pretty black and white. What do you think of that? If you think about that, if you resonate with any of what this commenter said, are you somebody out there relating to somebody with BPD or NPD, and you might not yet realize it, or you think they have it and you're not sure, but there's patterns, but you have your codependent patterns, but you're not realizing your codependency because you're still in denial of your codependency. As this person said, they're having difficulty, what they said at the beginning, identifying. I'm having trouble identifying as codependent. It's not about, quote, identifying as, it's about getting through the denial and realizing how your own core woundedness from childhood is dictating or more in control of you than you realize. It's often unconscious for people why you're in this relationship, why this person is asking these questions. And maybe you can relate to this, and maybe you want to keep trying to be in this relationship, but it's one way, it lacks mutuality and reciprocity. The person is showing you that they don't know how to love you, but maybe they're saying, I love you. Well, there's some inconsistency there, incongruency, which often people with BPD will be incongruent, inconsistent, because they'll either be in the idealization to devaluation, or they'll be in the devaluation to coming back to base mood, but they don't re-idealize after so many devaluation splits. So you see, if you resonate with this, or if it makes you angry, which is not my intention, or you're like, wait a minute, I don't think so, because, and think about it, because maybe you're somebody who has codependency like 95% of people, according to Melody Beattie in her series of books on codependency, Codependent No More, 12 Steps of Codependence Anonymous, which I don't recommend anybody goes to Codependence Anonymous for the codependency, that we understand what it is today, and that it's rooted in childhood, and it has to do with core woundedness that can be oh so close and oh so similar in a family system, a dysfunctional family of origin, a narcissistic dysfunctional family of origin, wherein somebody has enough resilience with their woundedness to have codependency, but not end up with a diagnosis or all the traits or traits of BPD or NPD. And in some family systems where there's a lot of dysfunction and, different various forms of maltreatment, neglect, or many different iterations of this, the thing is that if there are, say, 3 or 4 children, you can have a child that ends up with BPD, one that ends up with NPD, and 2 that are codependent. But people don't really come on those family systems securely attached or healthily independent, because these family systems and situations or dysfunctions are interrelated and have at core in the family dynamic of communication all that can be considered, having to do with a cluster B, and or the reality of the nature of the codependency, within that dysfunctional family system. And that, I'm not going to say more about that, like specifically because it can be vastly different for many people who are trying to relate to people with BPD or NPD today, because you don't understand, never mind how you were attracted to them in here and now, that's important, but the unconscious reality of your core woundedness and the fact you have codependency. A lot of people don't know that. They don't know they're going to get into a relationship with somebody that may well have or has BPD or NPD or traits of, or whatever the case. This is the reason. This is the connector that people need to understand. I'm out here to work with you. If I resonate with you, I help people to put these dots together in their childhood. For some people, it's really obvious and they already know what happened in their childhood that really wounded them. But so many more people with codependency who are denying it, like this person said they're having trouble identifying with it, so they're denying it and they're too focused on the other person. That's the other thing that people with codependency do. Very commonly, focus on the other person. Don't look at yourself. Don't understand what you need to change. Don't worry about how you're hurting. Forget that part and just try to rescue, fix, change, or relate to this person with BPD and be wondering like, well, yeah, were they trying to love me? She said she loved me, but she was doing all this other stuff, but she never said she didn't love me. Well, what's missing there is the person's understanding. And can you relate to this? In the commenter's case, they're missing the understanding of the fact that the way the person treated them and behaved toward them, their verbal maltreatment or poor treatment of this person, that's the antithesis of love. And love and anything that isn't reciprocal and mutual within a relatively healthy kind of way, it's not healthy love. So is it really love? No, it isn't. It's about the trauma bonds. And people come together in those bonds when they have BPD and all that core primal woundedness that BPD is really a response to. And people with codependency have their own levels of core trauma or woundedness in childhood come together, and it doesn't make for growth on both people's part. It doesn't make for reparation, which is unconsciously what is happening inside a person with BPD, inside a person with codependency, may be motivated somewhat differently from perhaps not the exact same woundedness or at the exact same stage or age of childhood development. But this is why codependency isn't codependent personality disorder and isn't in the DSM, because they decided that codependency overlaps too much with BPD and dependent personality. And that's not to say that people with codependency have BPD or dependent personality disorder, but there's a close overlap there. Overlap doesn't mean same, similar, or exactly the same. So why do you think, if you struggle with this, but you now realize your codependency and that's helping you in your healing process, why do you think so many people are denying codependency? Are you one of them? What do you think about that? Like I said, it's not a blame word. It's not a shame word. It is a very well understood construct of childhood woundedness and dysfunction within family of origin and family systems. And not all families have the same dysfunction. Not all families with this dysfunction, where there's codependency and it's rooted in childhood, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have a cluster B parent. Many people do, or two of them, but not everybody. So if you're still denying, or like this commenter said, you just can't quite quote identify that you have codependency or understand that, why do you think that is? And I'll tell you right now, it's a major block to not being able to let go of these relationships. It's a major block to not breaking free from the unhealthy bond. And it's a major block from being able to get into your own healing and recovery process, which I'm out here to help you with, if I resonate with you, that you need, because you need to heal your childhood woundedness in codependency to be able to become an individuated, independent adult. Just as people with BPD need to go to therapy and treatment, and they need to find themselves, and there's a lot of things they need to work on, but part of that recovery also is learning how to regulate emotions. Same with many people with codependency. Learning how to know self Same with people with codependency, not to the same degree as people with BPD. So there's all this similarity, and it's not the same. But we see people with codependency continually denying the codependency, thinking that doesn't mean anything, and that everything is just the person with BPD's fault, or the person that you suspect has BPD. It's all their fault. And what about you? Well, but you don't realize the choices that you're making from deep within your unconscious, which are actually being made by a wounded inner child, and how your wounded inner child is often relating to the person with BPD, whether the person with BPD might be sort of in an inner child. If they knew self, they have to develop a container of self. They would be in that space too, or they might be in the emptiness where there isn't even that known inner child yet. These are not adult to adult relationships. They're parent to child, child to parent, child to child, or lack of child in the person with BPD even. Because of the instability of identity, which is really about arrested development by the age of 2, that a lot of people aren't talking about today. And it's important to think about it, because people with BPD, I don't believe in this, and I've said it before, and I think I need to say it more. I don't believe in this construct of it as a mental illness. It is not the biology of the brain, and yet this be the most popular message out there. It's not proven. It's pseudoscience. And I'm going to continue to say that, and I'm going to have more coming that might be available, not free, but like at ajmahari.ca on that. So people denying their codependency or even people who are starting to realize they have, or they know they have codependency. And don't forget, counterdependency and codependency aren't always two opposites. They can intermingle. People can be, like this commenter said, they hadn't been in a relationship for 7 years. That might have been some counterdependency. And they get in the relationship, and then it's like they said they would help them. They felt bad for them. And so then they're getting more into the codependent sort of, you can vacillate between counterdependency and codependency. So if people don't want to realize the importance of this codependency in terms of the way and reasons why you're relating to somebody maybe who isn't diagnosed with BPD but might show the patterns, or who definitely has their own relational problems, don't forget people with BPD also have codependency. And I guess so do, I think, the covert, more fragile, vulnerable narcissist. I don't really see the reality of codependency in the overt, grandiose narcissist, just because somebody out there and everything they say matters to everybody, because they got to be right 100% of the time or something. But they described it that the overt, grandiose narcissist is dependent on supply, therefore it's codependent. It's not the same thing. Anyway, gently and with compassion, I would say to anybody listening to this, you really need, if you haven't yet, realized your own codependency and you're stuck in one of these relationships where it's painful, and person asking the questions this commenter asked, if you can relate to that, then there's more you need to know about yourself. You need to get into a healing and recovery journey, because people with codependency continue to think everything is, these people have BPD and you might not know that, or patterns of. And then this one commenter said because I can't remember why. What was it again? Wait a second here. He felt bad for her, which is why I think she has both BPD and is a covert narc. Because he felt bad for her? Doesn't make sense, does it? Anyway, the message here is people with codependency need to learn and understand more about themselves, childhood woundedness, and some of it's obvious for many people, some of it's not. You need to get into your own healing recovery process, because everything isn't the other person's fault. It takes two to do this toxic drama, chaotic dance at minimum.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.